welcome back to another video from Plannercraft. So I'm Natalie, and today we are going to be doing a bit of work with multicolour drawing. So if we're going to do that, we need some pens, and I thought I'd take the opportunity to kind of introduce you to a set that we've been donated to the channel. And this is a Castle Arts 100 gel pen set. So let's have a look, see what makes it different to other gel pen sets that are available. So let's crack it open. So the lovely box for starters, so it does arrive really well packed. Okay, so we have 4 layers of gel pens, and hiding, I'm going to take this out before I try and open it because I know these will fall out. We have a gel pen tutorial, which is going to give you a bit of insight into an idea on how to use the pens. But what I will say is it is very loose instructions, so you are better practicing with them and getting hands-on rather than trying to follow this in too much depth. The Castle Arts brand has a universal colour system, so this means that their colours should match across their range, so that you're going to be able to have the colour pencils that match the gel pens that match the paint. So that's quite a good feature of this brand. So next, let's get into the pens themselves. So on the front, we can see that we've got 28 glitter, 14 glitter and neon, 6 swirl, which are really interesting, exciting. I'm going to get into those in a bit. Pastel, neon, classic and metallic. Okay. And the swirl pens are where I got this idea for doing multicoloured text and drawing. So our swirl pens are actually on the front of our packet. And let me just pull those out for you. So we have a green, a blue, and note these descriptions are very loose because what the actual colours are in them varies. So let's get these out, and we're going to go into them in a bit more depth. So let's move that to one side. And let's just grab a bit of paper. So I'm going to use my notebook for this one. Okay. So first we have purple. And I'm going to describe these by the colour of the caps. So we start writing with it and it looks fairly one colour. But as we move through the barrel of the pen, you're going to see that we're going to get different colours. So we've got purple, we've got blue, we've got kind of limey green in this one. So if I do a bit of a squiggle, maybe eventually we'll get those colours coming out. She says. It will get there eventually, honest. She says, I would pick one that doesn't work straight out the gate, wouldn't I? Okay. So that's the purple. And I'll come back to that one and see if we can get that one to work. But next, we have green. Now, as you can see, this one's going to work a lot better. So in the green pen, we have the blue, the neon green, the neon pink, and the neon yellow. So we end up with something that has lots of different tones to it. So if I zoom in, let's see if I can get that to focus. There we go. You can see that straight away we've got lots of colours in one drawing. So if I do this, you can see that we've got all the colours kind of going through at once. which kind of gives you like a sagey green tone, but there's going to be areas of that yellow, areas of pink, so it's going to be giving you really interesting colours. Next we have yellow. So the yellow has sort of the blue, the pink and the yellow colours. And yeah, again, I'm just going to hold that just so you can get that in focus. You can see it comes out quite pale, but the advantage of these is that they're actually like a chalk base. So they're also going to really pop on dark coloured card. So I have a little stash of cards that I've set aside for this project. So I'm just going to do a little squiggle on the back of my purple. And you're going to see how much these kind of pop out. Now they are going to sink a little. So what I would suggest is if you're doing an area, just go back over it again. And the more you can build up those layers, the brighter that colour is going to get. So let's do the same with the green. Just do two, just so it's fair. Now obviously purple on purple, probably not going to give you very much. But you can kind of see that there's a shadow there of the purple. Okay, so next is orange. Now most of these pens will work straight out of the packet, so there's no need to remove any little tips or anything. It looks like this is another one where there's a good kind of layer of that colour, so rather than me trying to squiggle endlessly, we'll get it in use and then it can do that as it's drawing. Then we have blue. So with the blue, if I hold this up here, you can see it kind of goes from that bright blue to being more purpley by the end of it, because it's starting to pull through the purple shades. So you've got purple, blue and orange, which seems like a really weird concoction, because usually if we mix blue and orange we're going to get mud. And then finally we have pink, which actually starts off purple and then goes pink. So with these pens you're always going to get a different effect every time you draw. And it's not something that you generally see in a gel pen set like this. So I thought those were a good place to start. So let's pop these back in the little container. I say little, it's not that little. Let's get the yellows absconded. There we go. So they do fit in here snugly, but what I would say is over time as you're using it, you're probably going to want to take them out of here and put them into something a bit more permanent. Gel pens are better stored horizontally, so that's something to consider in terms of your storage solution. Okay, it has this kind of hinge here, and if we do that, it's Velcro sealed this end. Now I'm just going to give that a little bit of help, because as you can see my one dot likes to move, so that's another reason why I'm probably going to take them out of here. So we have metallics, glitters, and then our opaque pens are on this side. So you're also going to find your richer colours are in here, and your pastels are going to be more on the outside as well. So, and then from here it actually opens up again. So if you've got a bigger desk than I have, you can actually open it out, flip it over, and you've got them all accessible at once. So these don't quite fit on my desk. So you're probably looking at over a metre worth of pens. So if you've got like a 2-metre desk, lots of space, then you can open that out and have them all ready to go. Failing that, get yourself a little pen storage where you can actually store them horizontally, coloured caps to the end, so that you can identify which is which. So that's the other thing. When you're looking at the pens, you're going to see that they each have a different coloured cap or different effective cap. Okay, so the pearlescent ones are going to be your metallics, your sparkly ones are going to be your glitters, your solid coloured ones, so right up this end here, are going to be your basics. Okay, and I'll flip this over. So then you've got your transparent caps, which are typically your swirls here. Then you've got less transparent, so these more translucent caps, and these are going to be like in neons and your kind of glittering neon as well. Finally, we have our pastels. Now what's really bizarre is they're going to call these pastels, but obviously these at this end aren't quite a pastel, but what they are is opaque. So let's take the yellow. So as we said before, yellow is going to be quite hard to see on the white, but when we take it to our card, so this is going to give us more of a yellow rather than a pastel yellow. Let's go for, so that's that one. So that's in our bright solid section. So let's go more to our pastel, and then you're going to see the difference. So we've got that nice and bright. Now I know one of the things you're all going to be asking is about the white gel pen, because finding a white gel pen is like finding the Holy Grail. So you know that my preference is the Arteza or the Uniball Signo Broad, depending on what I'm doing. But I thought I would kind of give you a bit of the insight into this one. So I have used this one a little bit. So there we go. That's our white, one layer off. So to be fair to the others, just done one layer on that one. Now, off to one side here, I have an ink lily one to compare with. And again, I've used this one too. So we can see that the line on the ink lily is actually a lot bolder. So the white is going to be good for shading with, but it's not going to give you that true bright white if that is what you're looking for. So if you want something that is going to be bold and white, you've got either the ink lily one I just used, the Arteza, or the Uniball Signo Broad, or go to our white foil, which will give you a fantastic result and be water resistant. Okay, so let's pop this one back away. So as you can see, you can actually do this so that it will close up both ways. So if you find you're always using this side, don't be afraid to just swap it round. You can always swap your Velcro dots as well if you want to. Okay, so let's flip over my card for a second. Now, I have a design in mind that I want to build for you.
I don't know that.
Ignore her. Okay, so we have our purple card, a kind of denim-y blue, cream or a pale beige would be good, a pink and darker pink. Okay, so I've got to say thank you at this point to Leslie from Chocolate Rock, who put up an image that I kind of pulled this colour palette from, because I was kind of stuck this morning with what I was going to use for a colour palette. So I used a website called Cooler by Adobe just to kind of extract different colour palettes from the image to choose one I liked and one thought would go with my theme. And to that I'm adding 2 shades of green. Okay, why I've added these will become very clear very soon. So now, usually with gel pens, there's a tendency to be really bright, really bold. So I wanted to go for a colour palette that was going to really challenge that notion, so that we can actually see how far we can push these colours and whether they're going to be suitable for a more advanced crafter. Okay, because gel pens typically tend to be pretty much aimed at the kind of teenager market, and it's going to be good to see if we can actually make that a bit more not adult, but you know what I mean, sophisticated, that's the word. I've got a DL card and this is what we're going to be drawing onto initially. So let's first of all grab an old washi roll tape. So this can be one that we're not really enamored with anymore, or it could be that it's starting to lose its stick and tearing, and we're going to pop that just to the far side of the score line. Okay, so I'll pop that there, and that's going to help me see when I do my scan where the score line is, because if it's white card or even on some colours, you're going to struggle to see that kind of halfway point. Okay, doesn't take much, just a little bit at the top, a little bit at the bottom, just to kind of give you that line in between. So let's set my gel pens to one side for a moment and we'll come back to those in a bit. And I'm going to put this onto my mat. So this is a bit of a different way to how we would usually work. So I'm just going to pop this in 1 inch in, 1 inch down actually, so that I can use as much of that card as possible. If we put it up towards the top here, we won't be able to draw right up to this edge here. Okay, so by dropping it down, we're giving ourselves a little bit more room for manoeuvre. Okay, so let's wake up the ScanNCut because it's gone to sleep. And we're going to be looking at this design here. So let me just change view. So we have this lovely tulip design. It's in the Flowers and Nature section. It's ARA 103. That means that it's available on the higher end models. So the 1200, the 2200, and so forth, up to the top. Okay, so rather than jump straight into this bit, I'm going to start off with my card base. So for now, I'm just going to press home to reset. Okay, let me just adjust that angle a bit. There we go. We had a bit of a move around with the camera angles yesterday, so I'm just readjusting that a little bit so you can see better. Okay, so let's load that mat in with our card attached. Next, we need to get this scan into our software, so into Canvas. There's a couple of ways we could do that. So we could go to Scan Direct Cut and do it that way. We could scan it to USB and set that USB in. But if we go across one extra, you've got Transfer to Canvas Workspace. So this isn't something I usually show on stream very much. But it's a really easy way of being able to bring in a guide from your mat so that we can actually design in Canvas Workspace. So let's tap on that one. It's going to say, how big an area do you want me to scan? So if you are working with a 6x6 area, let's say, you could change it to 6x6 and so on and so forth. But for today, let's leave it at the 12x12. And yesterday I was doing some drawing, which means you have your lever up in the top position. So we're just going to lower that down. And then we can tap to go. Now, if your card is particularly thick, or it might have additional layers on it already, then just leave that scanner lever in the upright position. Okay. So it's now finished transferring. We can say OK. And instead of it hovering there then for that design to come back over Wi-Fi, it's then going to let you carry on doing other things. So if you want to carry on designing with that tulip, for instance, you can carry on doing that while your other hand's doing the other thing. If you, if you really want to be, you know, saving time. Okay. So let's open up Canvas and let's pop you onto display. So, hello Canvas. Now, we've done that scan, so we want to bring that in first of all. So, import from your cutting machine as usual, but this time we're going to go to scanned image. And there you go, we have our guide. So, let's zoom in a bit so it's a bit easier to see what we're doing. Okay, so we've got our guide in. Now, what I would say is, if you can, don't remove your mat. Now, mine where it is at the moment is a little bit annoying, so I might just remove it. But if you're going to do that, just try and avoid the edges of your card, because you could possibly slightly shift it. Okay, so I'm going to unload that for a second. We can always use background scan to check that when we bring it back in. Okay. So let's bring our gel pens back onto our desk for a moment. And I'm going to pop back to my overhead. Okay, so let's choose our pens. So if I pop my card out here, let me see if I can fit everything on screen. It's going to be tight, but we'll try. So we've got our A6s, then we've got our A5s. So if I just do those like that, then I can see them all at once. Okay. So now we want to have pens that are going to match that. So in actual fact, that swirl purple is a pretty good match. So let's get that one out. Now, what I will do at some point is go through and swatch all these out, so it's a little bit easier to do this. So if you want to watch a video on me swatching and how I do it, then do reach out and let me know. So that might just be a good match for our green, but we'll see. If not, we may go to our swirl green for that, because that's still quite a good match too. Yeah, I'm going to go for that one. And I'm also going to go for that green swirl. Okay. Let's try the pink. See, that's going to be a bit too neon, I think, for us. Although when it looks on there, actually, it's quite a good match. So it's one of those things where the light kind of does a little bit of a trick on the camera. And I want something that is kind of a deeper purple. Let's go for this one and try that. So I'm aiming to match this card here. Okay, so that's a bit too ready. That one's better. That's more red. Let's try this pink in the middle. Okay. So we're doing pretty well. And I think I might go to the swirl blue for this one. And finally we've got that kind of beige colour. So swirl blue. And then we've got this beige colour here. So this is a really unusual colour for a gel pen, but I really like it. I actually use this in one of the magazine projects that's going to be in this month's magazine, which is due probably either tomorrow or Monday. Just depends on how much I get done. So I'm recording this on Thursday, I should say. Okay, so there's our beigey colour, so that we can use that. And remember how I said about using the white for shading? I may just bring that in at a later point, just to add that into our mix. So we've got a mix of pens that are going to give us a good range of colours, and we're going to be able to kind of assign those in Canvas. So let's go back to our display and our card. Now I'm going to be using some single line fonts, some bold fonts, playing with fill and things like that. But if you're only really confident with using hairline fonts, for instance, that is absolutely fine. You don't have to go out of your way to find these. So let me just untap these. So we're going to go to our text tool and let's put in our first word. Now I'm planning on having some kind of panel on here, and it's probably going to be square for our tulip to sit on. So that means we need to kind of concentrate most of our words around here, but we can also do a couple around the outside. So I'm going to click down the bottom here and let's go for friendship. Okay, now I'm going to change the font and we could go for a sketch font. So the sketch font is another word for a single line font, which is going to look, you may think, oh, it looks kind of childish at the moment. Try not to worry about that too much. So I'm just going to twist that very slightly because it does have this kind of downward incline. So I want to try and level that out a little bit. And I'm going to pop that up there, and it would look quite good in the purple. So let's go to a line colour, and I'm going to set that to probably our bluey purple. And of course we need to set it to draw. So there's our first one. Now if you find that you're clicking on that image accidentally, if we just lock it, it's going to stop us doing that and it's going to be locked in place. Okay, so let's add our next bit of text, and this time let's go for fun. And I'm going to change the text again. So we could go for a hairline font this time. So a hairline font looks like it's single line because the outside lines are so close together, but they are actually a kind of bordered font. So they'll actually draw that line twice, which is good in some ways, especially if you are working with pens that might not be as inky as brand new gel pens. So I'm going to turn that sideways. Now, you can fill these, but what I would say is it's very rarely worth it because your alignment is only going to be slightly off and it's going to have issues. So I'm going to size that so it's more or less in line with the top of my F and the bottom of the P. And then let's try and get those lined up. Okay. Next one. Let's go for love. Now, because our first two words have been lowercase, let's go for uppercase. So, for something like this where we can go much bigger, this would be a good opportunity to get in some filled fonts. So I can show you the difference. So I want something that is going to be nice and flowy, but without being a script font. Nope, that's definitely not what we need. Now, one of the videos I'm going to do coming up is how to actually handle all these fonts, because we have huge amounts and you'll be just there scrolling forever. There we go. So there's bits I like that, but let's see if we can make that look a little bit better. So up here, I'm just going to adjust my character spacing so they actually start to overlap. And then we can go to edit and we can go to weld. Okay. Now, if we go into layers, you can see that we've got our shape there, but our L is actually still separate. So what we can do is actually divide that L out if you want to, so that you can have that larger and our love smaller. So it really is up to your personal preference. So again, I'm going to size that down just so it goes in line with our F there. Drop that there. Okay. And again, we'll set that to draw. And let's set this one to a pink. And we'll do the same for this one here. Draw, and let's go blue. So you can see that we're starting to kind of give ourselves that grouping already. Now, unfortunately, with CanvasWorkspace, you don't have that option to select by colour. So from here on in, you want to try and do your layers according to the colours that you want to use. So we have a good set of about 8 pens that we pulled out. So what you really want to end up with is about 8 groups. Now those groups might only have 2 words, but it can still be a group. Okay, you don't think you've got to fill this whole space just to be able to use your gel pens. It's not true. So next, let's go for happiness. And I'm purposely wanting to go for a big range of fonts to give me the look that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go to American Typewriter for this one. So American Typewriter is a bit of a funny font because it's not hairline, but it's also not a regular font. So let's bring that in there. So now we're going to use our tape to give us our guideline for where we need to size this down to. So we've got to bring it inside that tape and a small border. Because remember, our score line is still to the right of this tape. Okay. And again, we want to set that to draw. And we want to also give it that another colour. So this could be our beige colour. So let's say we've done this little section now. We need another purple here. We don't want it to be a very big word. So let's go for... Don't really want to go for happy because it's right next to happiness. It wouldn't really make sense. Let's go for pal. And again, we're going to change font. And let's this time just do a little A&L. We're going to size that right down. I'm going to size it so it matches that L just here, so it kind of gives us that look of everything sitting in a grid. We'll colour that purple, it's more bluey purple. We're going to set that to draw. Now this time, if you wanted to, if you've gone for a bolder font than I have, you can fill that. But just for now. So I'm going to take that word and drop that down to our other purple. So then we're going to be able to select it easily and group it. Now let's move back to our love, because it needs that fill. Now the machine, as in the ScanNCut, doesn't have the ability at the moment to be able to fill in one colour and outline in another. You can kind of fake it with an opaque pen for that outline, having already outlined and filled once, but it doesn't have that inherent ability to do that. So if you want to do something like that, you might be better off looking at the silhouette. Okay, so I'm going to fill. So I'm going to make sure that this area here is darker than this one, so then we know that our palette is relating to our fill, and we can fill it with the same colour. Even if we change that fill colour, it's still not going to enable us to do it in two colours, so you're better off just leaving it as one colour. Okay, and we're going to carry on filling that space, so I'm going to speed this bit up now. So now what we need to be doing is grouping light colours together. So to do that, I'm going to click on the bottom one, shift and hold, and then click the top. Okay, then we can do Command G or Control G depending on if you're on PC or Mac. So click at either end with shift press between the two, and then we're going to group again. And this act of grouping them together is going to make it easier when we come to want to do our multicolour drawing. So everything should be in groups. Now, what I'm going to do is, let's say we want to use this in future. I'm going to do a save as before I bother shrinking up all my groups, because as soon as I do this, I'll drop them all back down again. So we will call this the multicolour card. And we'll call this the text layer. Okay. Now, when we're sending things to the machine that have an image, you can hide it if you want, and that, because it's not going to transfer anyway, and it just saves having that issue of, there's an image here and I'm not going to send it. Well, that's fine. I know you're not going to send it. You don't need to tell me every time. So, let's get our map back. Now, hopefully yours is still loaded. So I'm going to load that in. Okay. So, in Canvas, we want to work one colour at a time. So to do that, I'm going to shrink up my groups. Because we've coloured everything, I don't need to name my groups. If you are working all with black text, fair play to you for starters, because it can be a bit hard to try and judge where all the colours are if you don't colour it. But then you will need to also name so you know where you're going. Another idea, while I'm here, is if you're working on something like this and you want to equate to a pen, if your pens have a number, you can actually put that into your layer title. Okay, so add my pens to one side, pen holder, and let's start with our first colour. So I'm going to hide all my other groups. I'm going to work from the top down in this case. So we're going to start off with our green. Now bear in mind, I've unloaded and reloaded my mat, so it may be slightly out, but it should be pretty close. Okay. So we want to start off with a green pen. So I am just going to change view, just so I can show you how to load a pen. So excuse the keyboard. So when we're working with Canvas, we can do a lot of keyboard commands. So let's start with our green. Now we've got two greens to choose from. We could either go for the multicolour green, or we can go for the darker green. It depends on how legible you want your text. If you want your text to just be a background, then you can go for the swirl, and that's absolutely fine. If you want it to be more legible as a sentiment, then you can use the darker colour. For mine, I'm going to try and keep this background a little bit more subtle than most. So I'm going to pop that in. So we're taking the cap off a pen, we've pushed it through, and again, we're just going to apply light pressure while we pop that down. Now, you want to make sure that you're getting a grate, and if not, it's because your nib isn't in touch with your guide. So this is even the same if you are using the Brother pen holder. You want to make sure it's in firm contact with your guide. Now what I will do for the next one is I will try the Brother pen holder as well, so that you can see it in that one. Okay, so I'm going to pop my blade out of my machine. So square bit goes to the back here. Okay, we lightly rest it in. then close that down. Okay, so far so good. Now let's change view. So I'm going to go to my screen on my ScanNCut, because what I need to do next is we need to actually tell it where what it's doing. So we're going to go to retrieve data. We're going to pull it down from the cloud. Going to think about it. Helps if you send it. See, look, Natalie's on one of those days. Let's try that again, shall we? Oh dear. So let me send that again and we'll try it. Okay. Reset. Okay. So if you do go wrong, just resend it and all right. So one of the things you're looking for at this initial stage is that everything is in this blue colour. If anything is shown at black, particularly if you're working from the desktop version of Canvas, then you know it's not going to draw. Okay. In terms of the online Canvas, you do have the ability to have a line that will cut and draw, and that will show as black, which is a little bit annoying. I wish it would show us a different colour so that you could actually see the difference between the three options. But as long as it's blue, we should be good to go. We'll go OK. We're going to go to draw. Now, if your pen is really juicy, then what you can do is use that foiling option instead. But what I will say is it works in bands. So sometimes when you are doing that with text, particularly if you've got smaller elements of text like what we have here with our share, then you can actually find that you get like a disjointed word if that banding happens to go through that word. So I'm pretty happy with that. The things that have been filled will be filled. The things that aren't filled won't be. So that's what we want to see. Now, before I go too far, if we're going to edit, it's going to treat it as a group. So let's have a look, see what my settings are. So at the moment it's saying that it's not filled. Okay, so perhaps for all those it's fine. But when we get into our fill, we're going to be able to work with things like our fill pattern. So if I tap that, then you can change fill pattern in there. So I'm just going to make sure that when I'm sending all these across, that fill is solid. So even though it says the group isn't filled, what you can find is that it should pick up your individual fill options. So I'm going to go OK, 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 and go to draw. Now, with this particular design style, if what you wanted to do was actually emboss it, you could do it all embossed and not worry about colour. It's another approach, but let's start that going. So we're drawing, so it's saying lift up your scanner lever, so that's moving your scan glass away from where your wet ink is. It's just one of the steps it takes to avoid smudging the ink. So if I go to that one, there we go. So we can see straight away that we're getting some of that variation in colour through the swirl pen, which is good. Now what I will do very quickly is just have a look, see in Canvas if there's any issues from what's drawing. So if I hop back to the display briefly, I want to check to see whether things are being filled that should be filled, and so far so good. Everything looks correct because there's no fill in here either. Okay, that's looking quite good. So let's quickly pop back overhead. Now we're not going to unload the mat from this point onwards. So we've got our words ready to go. We want to then go back to our display. We're going to hide that topmost group. We're going to go to the next one. Okay, so this time we're going to go to a beige pen. So let's unload our pen from our holder. Always make sure that you put your caps on straight away. And let's line up the next one. So I'm going to go to the overhead cam for a second. So this next layer is our beige layer, so we're going to need our beige pen. And this time let's try our rubber pen holder. So take the cap off, you can stick it on the top, so it will actually hold on there as well. So as long as there's clearance above your machine, you're fine to do that. We're going to load that in. Now this is where I find it a little bit easier to tip it up, because you need quite a bit of a tug to lift this up. Okay, so you don't really have a hand to keep that there too. So let gravity do the work. So we know it's now resting against the bottom of this guide. So we're going to lift up this handle here. Then we're going to turn it in the direction of the arrows to the point where it feels tight on the pen. Okay, when it feels tight, we're going to lower that down. Now sometimes you'll find that's between 2 points. Now because obviously if you can't get any further, you can't get any further, it's going to be slightly loose. Now one of the solutions that a lot of people will do is put tape on their pens, but to be honest that can be a bit of a pain in terms of putting caps back on and things. So what I would say is, if you're having this particular issue, you can use a bit of the PTFE tape that we usually use around our screw threads of our blade holders to actually temporarily do that for our pens. It doesn't take very much. Okay, I'm going to give that a quick squiggle, make sure that our pen is working. We can then pop that in. If at any point you're concerned about whether it's still touching, you can always pop it back in and it should go right back in. Okay, so now we can load that into our machine, and you're going to see that it does fit just a little bit better than the 3D thumbprints, but that's because it's got that flat back. Okay, so don't think that if you're struggling to get your 3D thumbprints holder in, it does go, you just have to give it a little wiggle. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to go back to Canvas and send that next line. Okay. Okay. And we're going to go to cancel. So you can see our journey at the moment looks like it's filled in, but our happiness isn't and our wife isn't. So let's see what our ScanNCut has to say to that. So there we go. So what we're going to do is we are going to reset. We're going to go to retrieve and bring that down from the cloud. We can go into edit, object edit, and let's zoom in. So if we go to zoom, we can zoom to 400%. We're going to use our buttons to the lower right of the screen to move our screen. Okay, so we can see what should be filled actually isn't, while other bits that weren't filled aren't. So we now know that our grouping is affecting our fill, and we still want to have that option. So in this case, what we would do is, it's still correct in CanvasWorkspace. It's only when it's sending that it's wrong. So I'm going to ungroup. Okay. and I'm going to regroup the elements that I want filled. So in this case it's this one, and I'm going to add a fill to this one too. So let's go to our fill, like so. We can group it, and we still have our other word here showing, so we can resend that as is. Okay, sent it by the internet. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to go OK and reset, because we want to re-import that back in. Okay, so now we can see that our two words are filled and we've still got our empty fill there. So we can go OK, go to draw, and let that go. Meanwhile, back in Canvas, I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to take these two groups, and just for now I'm going to group those together just to make the next bit easier. Okay, so our next group is our purpley pink, so we can start to narrow down which pens we're using. So I'm going to go for our metallic pink. And because we've got our two pen holders, we can actually go back to this one and be loading our pen ready. Okay, with some pens you can find they're a little bit trickier to get through. Okay, so make sure it's grating, take the guide off. The reason that we take the guide off straight away is otherwise with gel pens you can find that that pressure is going to actually push down. So just realised I'm on the wrong camera, so I do apologise, but the voiceover kind of does it all for you. So let's go back to the display. So we're going to have the same issue here where we've got these two words that we definitely don't want filled and one that we do. So I'm going to take the shape that I do want to fill out of that group, but leave it visible. Now if it is dense and it goes into the other group, we're just going to click on it and move it between the two. Right, so there we go. And we'll hide that other group. So now we're good to go. And we can already, while that is still drawing, be sending our next layer. So then we start to speed up. Now that said, I'm just looking at basically what it's been drawing, and it's missed a little bit just here. Okay, so don't worry about that. And let me just swap over to this one so you can see it a bit clearer. So we've got a little bit that it's missing, but what we can do is just readjust our pen and send that through again. Now it's only got 1 minute left to go, so in this case we're actually better off to just let it finish, readjust the pen and do the whole lot again. If there were any bits that were like totally saturated with gel pen, what I would say is just redo just sections. But it's kind of a bit hit and miss all over. So okay. So we really need to do that happiness and journey again so that we can see it. So if I pop this back to the overhead, we can see that over the time that it's been drawing, it's kind of lifted itself up. So it's amazing really that we've got the amount of drawing that we have. Now let's try that again. So we're going to lift up to center, pop it back in, lift it up, and we're going to go right way round as much as it will go. Okay, so that's as tight as it's going to go. I'm going to give it a very gentle tug just to see if that is going to lift too, but I think we should be okay. So let's try that again. I'm going to go okay and put that back through the drawing process. Now, another thing to discuss while I'm here is over time these guides are going to get dirty. So what you want to do is have to one side some baby wipes, because particularly if you're going from a dark pen to a light pen, or from a glitter to a felt tip or something like that, it's going to pick up the older ink. So we want to be making sure that we're keeping that ink residue in there to a minimum. Now, alcohol is the best for getting everything out, including things like the paint pen where it explodes. If you're thinking that mine looks particularly messy, that's what did it. It was the paint pen. Okay. And we can also do the same to the 3D thumbprints one. So if we look in here, we can see that we've got lots of that blue ink. So I'm just going to give that a good clean. There we go. And let those dry before using them again. So now, because this pen has been sitting out for a little while, what I'll do is before I put it in, is just give it a little squiggle and just make sure that it's going to be good to go. Now, depending on the effect you're going for, you might like that kind of distressed missing text look. And if you do, just do your ink blending afterwards. So you're going to find one of two interesting effects with gel pens. They're either going to repel your ink, or it's actually going to soak it in more, so that you almost get like a shadow image, which is really quite funky. So you'll notice, let's take this off in a minute, that you're still going to find that pen shifted a bit. So that is why we prefer the 3D thumbprint. So even though it's, you know, has that issue where you're going to want to do a little wiggle to put the lever down and just make sure it's absolutely seated in the right place, it actually holds the pens better, which is more important, particularly if you want to be working with something that is accurate. The other point to make is also to check that your pen comes through here evenly. So you want to be able to see that your legs of your holder are pretty equal. So okay, so we've got our text in. There's still a few bits and pieces that are a bit hit and miss, but I think for what we're using it for, that is going to be fine. So we can lift, pop our lid back on, pop that back in our guide for now, and let's give our pen a squiggle, looking good. So bear in mind we've already sent our file, so I'm going to go OK, home to reset, and download the next layer. Okay, so let's go into edit. I'm going to use my arrow keys to go between my objects so that we know that we aren't moving anything. And we can go into our fill settings. Our fill is on. We have a pattern that is solid, but our fill line spacing is 0.4 mil. So your fill line spacing is literally that. It's the space between your fill lines. So if you're looking for something that has a lovely smooth fill, particularly if you're noticing in your previous drawing that it's not quite getting the look that you want, we're going to actually reduce that down. So we can see that 0.3 is the default, which is what it means when it goes to that black background and white text instead of the other way around. We have our fill direction. So if you are looking at a word and you think, well, actually horizontal or vertical isn't the best option for that, there's kind of an angle to it, then you can work with that too. Now your fill direction is actually pretty adaptable, so I'm going to go to about 30 degrees, maybe. Let's go down to about 20, and I think that should suit the flow of our text quite well, so that we're going to have longer fill strokes rather than little ones going across. I'm going to go OK. Now, if ever you want to kind of see that effect up close, we can actually preview it. So I can go into zoom, use our scroll function. I'm going to zoom a bit more. Make sure that you're using those lower right. Okay, so it looks like it's going a bit the other way to what I was thinking. So I want it to go more sort of like that. So I'm going to go OK. I can go back into my fill settings and I can change it. So let's go for that one. OK, zoom, 400, and we can scroll down and across. Down a bit more. Okay, so now we can see that it's following more that angle, and we've got these longer fill lines. So you can go OK and let that draw. Now in terms of speed for drawing, you'll notice that everything I've done on a 2. With some gel pens, particularly older gel pens, you're going to want to slow that right down to 1. If you're working with something that isn't a gel pen, so something like a fibre tip pen, then you're actually going to want to send that speed right up to the other end of the scale so that it's working nice and quickly. Particularly if it's an alcohol pen, so there are a number of alcohol pens on the market that will fit our ScanNCut. So obviously your Copics, your Pro markers aren't going to fit, but there are some other pens out there that will fit. So things like the Kuretake Fine and Brush will fit. The Deco Time thin alcohol pens will fit as well. So these have fine line at one end, brush the other. So you have options. I look forward to the day where they can actually vary the pressure as it's actually working as well, so that it can do things like brush lettering. I'm sure it will get there eventually because it has the motion. It just needs to have that control of it. Okay, so we're starting to see hints of that fill already, and we can see that it looks pretty good actually. I'm quite happy with that. By doing that little adjustment of going to the angle, then we can actually see a better quality of fill. Whereas if we'd have kept that at the horizontal, sometimes what you can see is that you get like kind of Greek key design going on. Particularly if your fill line spacing is too far apart. But I really like that coverage, so that's a really good trick, that. Meanwhile, our other text that we can see here is not going to be filled in. So let's go back to display, and we're going to hide that group, not there. I'm just going to group those two together for now, like so. Okay, so our next group, we now have our blues, and there's a few different fill options here, so we've kept those kind of empty. It's just the big long marriage, which is this one, which we want to take out of the group. So I'm just going to drag it down and let go. Check everything is set to draw, and then we can send that ready. Okay. So just so that you can see where we're heading now, there's your overhead shot. I'm just going to take the pen out of the pen holder. Now, just because I'm finding that fill is so much better and coverage is so much better with 3D fun prints, I'm going to go with that one. So our next colour is blue, so I'm going to use the blue gel pen. So that's the blue swirl. I'm going to pop that in, tighten it up. Okay, pop that into my holder. Gonna go okay. Home to reset. Retrieve. Okay, let's go back. Just because I hadn't sent it yet, I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, there we go. So before we go and actually draw that, let's do that same check again. So I'm going to go into edit, and I'm going to go into zoom. Now this time we could do with that angle coming across this way for all our uprights. So I'm going to go okay, object edit, fill, and let's change this angle again. So I'm going to go back to the 20, I think. Let's try that. And zoom. And then we have, or should have, our lines going along angles, which is looking good. Now, it can kind of mess with your head when you've got objects that are rotating themselves and then you're trying to angle the fill to fit. So if you're thinking that you can write notes of which font uses which angle, no, it doesn't work like that. It depends on the rotation of the word. So let's go okay, okay, draw, and start. Now this is one of the swirl pens, so hopefully we'll start to see some of that variation coming in, because we've got quite a lot of fill area as well. So when it's filling, it's going to draw that outline first. then it's going to come back and do the fill. So that's something else to bear in mind, particularly where you're working with a pen like this, where it's going to have that blend through. So other pens that you might want to do this technique with, you've got the chameleon fine liners that you could be using to do this kind of variation. Okay, so if you are interested in the pens, there is actually a discount code for these that I will pop up in the description. So you're actually going to be able to go and get a, I think it's 20% discount. I'll confirm it in the write up below. So please do go and have a look at that, and you can also check out all their other goodies. So you'll know from previous streams that I already have a set of the botanical and portrait pencils, which I use for all of my DT work, but I've also been using them for some adult colouring. So watch my social platforms to see some results of those, because they are, even though I just say it myself, they are stunning. So I'll talk a little bit more on a future video about grayscale colouring books, because they are fantastic for if you just want to just chill out for a bit. So rather than having to worry about having a black outline that you think, oh, it looks a bit kiddie-ish, grayscale colouring books actually just sit underneath your actual colouring. I did also say that I would show the magazines next week, so hopefully I should be able to have both April and May so that you can see those. But our magazines kind of cover a range of techniques, so it's not all about the ScanNCut or even Silhouette and Cricut, because May issue you're going to notice some big changes coming in where we are starting to cover other machines as well. So you know I already have a Silhouette that I also do work with, but we're also going to be adding in Cricut, and also we are looking at getting a new laser. So the laser that we had before, we've actually sold it now, and it was good for doing certain things, but it was starting to meet its limits for what we wanted to do with it. So Andy, who does all of our 3D printing for us, actually has a X-Tool M1, so you're going to be starting to see a little bit of content from Andy as well, which is going to be brilliant. And we have lots of really fun things coming up that I just can't tell you about, and I'm like sitting on my hands until I can say. It's like, oh, come on. Okay, so one of the things I've noticed through the overhead camera is the blue is looking a little bit like the fill lines are a little too spaced out for that particular nib. So we can still go back through just that line spacing and do that again. We're going to get more solid result. Okay, so let's hop back to the screen. The angle itself is fine, but it just needs that little bit of line space adjusting. So I'm going to go back, edit, object edit, then we're going to go to that fill and take it down one notch. So 0.2, that means our lines are going to be moving closer together. And what I'm hoping is that in some ways it does that marriage word first, because the other bits of text I'm actually pretty happy with. So it's going to do our outline. Now the other thing to say is, because this is a script font, what we could have done is actually welded that as well, which would actually give us a more flowing outline rather than it drawing one, then one, then one, then one. It also means that you can now see the difference between the pen colours as it's moving through that swirl, because now you can see that outline a bit stronger. So let me switch to overhead and we can see that much closer up, so that we've got that outline that is now more purpley toned, and our original blue fill. So we haven't changed pen, it's exactly the same pen. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to more castle arts materials going forward. So I will also show those pencils again that I said about, just so that you can see those, and how we can do some colouring with grayscale colouring, because we can also apply that to our stamps as well. So if you have a grey ink pad, then you can use that. Good news is, once it's done this fill section, we're then going to be able to cancel that drawing, and we should be nearly there. Just one more group to go. So that last group is going to be our blue purple. So it's going to be this one. Let's go to overhead. Okay. Let's pop that in there. So we have little teeth on this holder, and just because I know it's slipping a bit, I'm going to aim to get these right at the start of that. Okay, just going to pop that cap just slightly over that end. It won't do tons much, but a difference. But okay, so going into our group, we can see that is filled, that is filled. This won't be filled, so we're going to have that same issue with the group. So let's take those things that are filled and take them out of that group. Okay, and we can group those together too, and we can send that across. Okay, so here's another error that you may see. Tiny objects are automatically removed when converting to FCM because it's too small to cut. Now obviously your initial gut reaction to that is, I'm not cutting, I'm drawing, but it still does that same process. And usually it's things like the dots on your eyes, so like here and here, we know it's going to lose. Now for something like this one here, I don't mind just dotting that in. But let's say you've got a more formal font that you want to keep those little dots of the eye in. The trick is to then actually do that little bit of a word in Affinity, convert it to SVG, having welded it all into one shape, and then when you bring it into Canvas, it ignores the fact it's too small, whether you want to cut it or draw it. So that is how we can get around doing things like stencils where they have like circles that are smaller than 3mm. So we have actually got it down to sort of about 1.5 to 2mm circles it can actually do. So the 3mm minimum is a bit of a myth. Okay, so let's unload that pen. Back on with the cap and our little bit of scrap paper just to make sure that you get a nice flowing line. And pop that in. Okay, home to reset. To cloud. I've done it again. What is wrong with me today? There we go. It's because it doesn't now vanish. It really throws me off as to whether I've actually sent it or not. So, okay, so we've got our text in. Now, we've got fill on these top two items. So let's just very quickly do a quick check on that top group. Zoom in, scroll across. Okay, so at the moment our fill is going like this. We need it to go more like that. So I'm going to go OK. Fill settings. Now you could do this at drawing stage, but it's just easier to do it here and then go back and check. So let's go to about 340. And we're going to go into that zoom. Scroll across. Okay, still a little bit too. Let's try it at 0. Okay, so 90 and then a little bit. So let's try 100. Okay, zoom again, because we need to be able to see that line clearly, so you really do need to get into 100%. So that's not looking too bad. That's looking pretty spot on. If we look at our uprights, so we can go okay, go to draw and start that. And while I'm doing that, I'm just going to quickly wipe out my guides again. In terms of getting the ink out of your guides, it's actually better to clean as you go, otherwise it can kind of set in the nooks and crannies a little bit. But if you have like a detailed glue applicator, you can put a little bit of alcohol on that and you can get right into those notches. Okay. Okay, as this is the last layer of my drawing, once I'm done with that paper wipe, just throw it away. So usually when it comes to clean up, you'll hear me use things like bamboo wipes. When it comes to doing your guides, it's generally better to use a baby wipe because it tends to keep its body a little bit more. It doesn't shed any fibres, because obviously our pens are going in there quite often of the time. They're a rollerball pen, like a gel pen, or a ballpoint pen, and if the fibres get in there, that's when you start to have issues with clogging. So you want to make sure that when we're using the guides, they are clean and dry and free from dust, because dust is, yeah, gel pen's worst nightmare. The other thing to bear in mind is what you're drawing onto. So for instance, let's say you've got pastel colouring or chalk colouring on your actual card, and then you're going to draw it over the top. That is the time when you don't want to be using a gel pen, because the particles will actually clog your pen. Okay, so there's still a little bit missing on our lines down the bottom, so I'm going to send that round one more time. But just as I said, I've cleaned everything up. It's probably that the pen has shifted, yeah. So it just needs adjusting slightly, and then we can send that round again. It's just a fraction too small for that holder. Now if it done all that fill properly the first time, then what I would have done is actually just deleted that fill section and just done those lines again. But because there's a little bit missing on that N, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut my tulip pattern. So we're going to need our coloured card for that, and then what we're going to do is use our gel pens to actually shade. So swirl pens have actually created a really nice effect now that when we look into like areas where we've got like the marriage and the grow together, you can see that we got that subtle change of colour, but without it being really disparate colours. Now, places where we've got like issues here with the wife, I'm going to tidy that up a little bit, but we'll do that by hand. Okay, so we can see that it's done a bit of coverage up here, but we're still slightly off on this lower line section. So let's pop that back into the holder, push it back down. Okay, I'll put that in. Okay, we're going to go back, edit, delete the top group. So let me just, so we're going to delete that top group. Okay, then we can go to draw. So by skipping that top section, what we're hoping to do is to get that pen at its full height for that later word. Now you may still need to adjust it for that pal right at the bottom, but we'll see how it goes. No, actually that's looking pretty good. Now these are gel pens, so you do want to give them a little bit of time to dry before trying to do that fold or anything else. So I'm going to lift it very carefully off my mat. I'm going to try and use the back of the card to lift it up. Okay, so we've got that there. So let's go overhead. There we go. So there's our card base. We can see there's a few little areas that just need touching up. So while you can remember which pen's which, I'm just going to do a little bit of a touch. Okay. And same with like things like the palm, where it's too thin to draw it with a fill. If it looks a bit weird because you've got kind of this double line, we can actually use it as a guide to actually write it. Okay, so that's that one. We've got the beige that I said I would sort out just here. Oh, that's not the right pen, Natalie. Oh dear. Now let's see how good the coverage is. So we're gonna run that round there. Now it did move slightly on this one and did the second drawing, but that's okay. We're going to join that together so that it looks consistent. Okay, going to do the same for the wife here. Just because we've got that double registration, it's going to look weird else. So we're joining that up. There we go. There we go. Same with the happiness, if you think you need to just do any of the areas there, or with the journey. But I think I quite like how that's working. Okay, so then we've got our purpley pinky colour. So now you can decide if you want to fill in like the companion and the journey. To be honest, I think I'm going to leave that as is. The green was the green blend. So it's just whether you want to fill in your enjoy or your couple. It's a bit weird on the spacing on that one, but I thought, well, it's probably going to end up being covered up anyway. So let's go for that one. So I'm going to follow that round. Okay, so I'm quite liking that. So we're going to set that to one side and let that dry completely. Let's bring in our cards. So we've got our colour card. Okay, now this next bit we're going to do entirely on the machine. So I'm just going to save what I've done on the computer for another day. And we can quit that. Okay, so we're going to go OK and reset. Now we're going to go to pattern, designs, and we want to go into our nature. So let me just zoom that in a little bit closer. There we go. It's going to be a little bit better to... Whoop, don't knock it. There we go. Okay, so we're going to go down and choose our Tulip. So once again, just to reiterate, you can only do that particular design on the higher end models. So usually what I'll do is I'll try and pick one where everybody can do it. But I thought that's a bit unfair to those with higher models that might not know how to use some of the higher end files. So our DL card is just shy of 10 centimeters tall, so actually our Tulip is a bit too big. So we can do our resize at this point. Probably want it to be a reasonable size, so let's go for our 7 centimeters. So we're going to be able to rotate this round on our actual card base anyway, so I'm going to go OK. Now with our multi-part designs, what you're going to find is that you have the option of doing each colour piece by piece, so that if you want to cut it so you're working mat by mat, you can do, and that's fine. And that's what it means when it comes up saying cut next part. Okay, or you can do it all at once if you're working with smaller offcuts, so you can get all of the details on one mat. Now I'm looking at my card and I'm going, there's no way I can fit all that card on one mat. So then I'm either looking at trimming it down, which in some cases will work, or we do it mat by mat. So let's do it mat by mat. So I'm going to start off with a pale green. So it's this one here. I'm going to stick that onto my mat. Okay, so with that on my mat, even though it looks like it's now the darker green, it's the lighter green, we're going to go and let's go to this one. We're going to go to our A part, which is the first bit. I'm going to go OK. So that's going to then automatically give me the size for this new section, set. And it's going to put it into that top left corner. I'm just going to go OK. Now, just for speed, I'm going to do this all with a black AutoCut blade. Now, my black auto blade is playing up a bit, so I'm going to take that pressure up to -4. You'll know your machine and how it's behaving. Mine's misbehaving, so I'm going to push that up and hopefully do it in one pass. Okay, so we can peel that off. going to use a metal spatula to get this off my mat. Okay, so if we go, so I swap the camera to the overhead, you're going to see that we've got our little stem cut. We're going to swap to our next bit of dark green, and again that can go onto our mat. So that we've got that up into that top left corner. I'm going to go back to our screen and we're going to go select next part. So we know we've got a bit of card that's big enough for our next section, and we'll choose the next one. So we're going to go for B. Again, it's not going to let you change the size, so it's not that you can make a mistake as you're going between these layers. You can choose to cut more though, so if you want to do like some decoupage, then actually these designs are really easy to decoupage. Okay, so again, just going to cut that one. Now, I apologise for not going between screen and overhead, but for these where it's going to be quite small and quite quick, you could find actually going to get yourself in a bit of a... So we're going to go select the next part. Now we can see that there's a change in colour. So now we have to start making some decisions as to which colour we're going to go with. So you're not necessarily going to use all the bits of card that you have, but I'm going to go with the purple because I'm going to need 3 shades of whatever colour. So I'm going to do one from one shade, one from another, one from another. If you want to do it so that you are just going to use 2, and we could use the pink glitter to actually do this back panel. So it's really, the choice is yours. But for what I want to do, I'm going to start off with the purple. I can then go from there and kind of decide. So I'm going to go and do C. Now you don't have to do these in order. What I'll do is see if Ian can actually edit these as well, so that we can have like 2 parts as well. So because this is a little bit smaller, it's going to be a bit tricky to make sure that it's cut properly. If there's any bits that have been a bit resistant, okay, I'm going to pop that back down. Now, we know that it's always going to add that to the same part of the mat, so I'm going to go next part and then choose that same part again. It does that positioning entirely automatically, so. Okay, so now that lifts off and we've got that sorted. Now if at any point you get like a little bit of card stuck on your mat, just take it off before your next cut. Okay, so next we have to make a decision, and that is whether we're going to do the pink in 2 shades and use our glitter card, or if you want to just use our gel pens to actually do that shading for us. So I think I'm going to go for 2 separate colours. So just to show that we don't have to do it in the right order, I've put my light pink this time, and I'm going to use E layer. So I've skipped D and I've added to that, and we can go cut. Okay. So if ever you find it kind of negotiating how thick your card is, it's because it can't quite figure that out. So that's done a really nice clean cut now. So then we just need to do this last part, which is going to be our glittery card. I was going to toy with the idea of doing them both in that pink, but I just think let's add some sparkle. So let's go for that. Select the next part, and then we can go back to D. And we're going to go OK. And we can go set, OK, and cut. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing next is we're going to be using the gel pen to actually add some shading. Now, if you want to do a base for these to go on to make it easier to assemble, you can do. You just need to use the multi-group piece. So let me show you what I mean. Got my cream card, okay, so we can use that as a base. So I'm going to stick that to my mat. Let's get the right one. Okay, so with that stuck to my mat, I'm going to go next part. We've got multi-part. It's going to come in as it's grouped. That's fine, because what we want to do is we're going to go into Object Edit. We're going to ungroup it, so it's going to have everything selected without having to go to multi-select. Then we're going to weld it all together. Okay, so we can go OK to weld outline. It's irreversible. We can see that it's all lined up where it should be. I'm going to go OK. OK, and then we can actually cut that out. So with that going back overhead, then what we can do is just assemble that all together. Now I'm just going to move these elements of card to one side because we're probably going to want to bring those back. But while that is busy doing its thing, let's add a little extra touch. So I'm going to do a little bit of the pink. And I'm going to bring a bit of that purple in. The thing to do to get your blending going with your gel pens is to kind of work in layers and light strokes. And then you kind of move up the object. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to do stronger colour down the bottom. I'm going to take some of those lines up. So let me go back to overhead so you can see that. Now you can see you've got that darker colour down the bottom. Then we're going to blend back over the top with our lighter gel pen. Then we're going to stretch and pull that up. So as we go up our petal, it's going to pull more of that colour up. So you may be thinking at this point, why go for a coloured card if you're going to colour it all in? That's because we're not going to colour it all in. So we're just adding that little bit of shading to the bottom. So if you want to find a paler colour to kind of blend that in, you can do, or you can use your white. One of the things I haven't tested yet is if we can use the same watercolour effect, but I might do another video with that. Okay, so got our green. And I'm going to just pop a little bit of that darker green just in here. Okay, I'm going to use my other green. So this is our swirl green to blend that through. Okay. So we've got kind of a little bit of a blend. I'm going to work from the other end, so darker green first again. And as we get out towards the top, I'm just going to do like thinner, sparser strokes. And then we can blend that in. Now, what I am going to do very quickly is also bring in a bit of that white that I said about using. Because we can actually just blend that so it's a little bit lighter where we need a little bit of extra light. So let's do that there. And I'm just going to blend that out that way. There we go. So we have a bit of interest in that leaf. We can do the same for this one, but this time our dark green is probably going to look more lighter. So we can actually just pop a little bit up the end here. I'm just going to pop a little bit of that white up at the top. Now, I was saying on one of the groups to Carol that paper makes a big difference to your art supplies, and you can see here the difference between the purple card for soaking up your gel pens and the green. So I'm just going to fade that out. And I'm just going to do the same up here, just toning that green a bit at the top. There we go. So then when we assemble these, we're going to have that look like that. Our pink has a kind of faded bit, and I'm just going to do the same on the very bottom of this piece here, but I don't need to use the orangey pink on that just because it's so close to the tone of the actual card, so I can just do a little bit of dotted shading. And then with this piece here, that is going to be sitting in there like that. So let's get our bluey purple, and we're just going to do a little bit like so, just to finish that off. Now, got the purple swirl here, so I'm going to be a bit more careful about our blending because it can be a bit unpredictable blending with the swirl pens. Okay. So let's see if that cut okay while we're busy. Now you want to stay working with that file until such point as you're happy that you have all the layers that you need. Don't try and move on to your next shape too soon. So our backmost shape is actually the top of our flower. So if we start by assembling that, then we can build up our layers. Now, find my glue because it's done for runner again. Okay, so I'm going to pop a little bit of glue onto my green card. You don't need lots because it's not going to be load bearing on the front at all. You just need to make sure that it holds in the right place. So just take a little bit of time to line everything up. So if you want to just use a gel pen just to colour this edge, you can do. Okay, I'm going to do this next side here. The reason that we start the back and work forward is so that we can make sure that everything is fitting as it should. Now there is a slight overlap between these, so I'm just going to try and use that cream layer to give me a guide for where this piece should actually sit. So I kind of ignore the purple bit, and that's why we work at the back to the front. Okay, I'm now going to do the same for this bit. Now what I usually say is be sparing with your glue. Now you want to be a bit more careful about how you press on this one because it's still a bit damp. So if you can let these dry a bit longer, you will be much better off. So I'm just going to press that down. I'm trying to stay clear of where it's already had ink blended on it. You can always check from the back as well, so you can see your alignment. Okay, then we're going to do our stem. So again, you can see that's going to sit over the top of our flower. So we're going to want to apply little bits of glue going along our stem. Don't worry about the fact you've got this little bit hanging off the bottom because we're going to actually just trim that away in a minute. So let's line that up. And we're going to get that so it's lined up at the bottom. Line up the leaf. Now the leaf is a little bit flexible, and obviously the stem is because it's so thin. So just take your time. And we're going to twist where we need to get that to all line up perfectly. Okay, and finally we've just got our last leaf to do, so I'm just going to do that. Now we can see from our cream that it's actually going to come over, so we're going to put a little bit of glue just down there. But the other bits, it didn't matter so much because there wasn't that much of an overlap, but there we want everything to kind of stay in place without lifting. So I'm just going to pinch at the stem, and then if we pinch at the leaves as well, we're going to make sure that those line up nicely. Now I'm just going to press at the base of the flower so that we're getting that stem to seal. Okay, so now once we've done that, we can just tidy up anything that needs tidying up from that cream layer. Okay, makes you feel a little bit like you're being a florist. So now you need to decide whether you want that flower to go straight onto your card. So what I would normally say is let that dry completely before doing this next step. So we could just have that literally there, or we can do a shape to actually raise it up. So we haven't yet used our blue card, so let's just test that out. I'm just going to put it at an angle so that I have the idea of it just being a shape behind. I don't think it adds that much more to it though. I quite like how that is a bit cleaner. So now we can just add our glue. And I'm just going to twist it so that I'm not cutting off too much of the words and then I go and put my finger in it. Don't do that. Okay. So just going to press and hold that stem for a moment because it's curling up slightly. It's quite thick anyway, so okay. So all that's really left is, once that's dry, to just fold it and it will be job done. And I hope you've enjoyed that video. As I said, I will also try and get into do just a focus on the actual cutting of the tulip as well as a focus on the words, so that you can see both of those as well. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that and thank you for joining me. Do pop a like below or a love if you're on Facebook watching this. I hope we can share that across to you guys as well. So it's probably going to be that the shorter videos are going to be on Facebook, the longer video will be on YouTube. But I hope you have fun and bye.